Welcome to the daily news analysis session of Narayana IS Academy. I'm Yogesh Kottavar, and today we are going to discuss four most important articles from The Hindu and Indian Express. We'll cover them in a comprehensive manner, and all these articles are highly relevant for your upcoming examination. Now, before we start, a quote for you. Today is the architect of tomorrow. Build it with intention. So, whatever action today you are taking, even if you might feel that it is useless or you might not get any kind of fruit out of it today, but if you keep on doing it with good intention, with the right intention, you will get the fruit of it tomorrow in future. That's the reason we are saying today is the architect of tomorrow. You're building the architecture, the entire building of tomorrow. The architectural part is getting done today. So when you're doing it, do it with the right intention, and then your tomorrow will be very bright. Okay, so with this quote, let's move ahead. A notification from the Narayana's Academy. We have planned your preparation strategy and the entire plan for the prelims 2025. So you can prepare for the examination in 110 days through a self-study plan. This plan is available on the Android application. So you can just download this application, Narayana IS Academy, and you will get this plan. Apart from that, the admissions for the 2026 and 2027 batch are open. So those who are going to attempt in 2026, they can go for this 1 year prelims cum mains integrated course. Those who are planning to go for 2027 attempt, they can look for this 2 year prelims cum mains integrated course. The entire details related to this course is mentioned over here. You will find the same details on the website too. So please go ahead. You can even use that QR code which is there, which is being published on the screen. Okay. Now moving ahead with the articles of the day for daily news analysis. The first article that we have is, should convicted persons contest elections? Now this is highly important. Many times we have seen there are many politicians who are charged with some kind of a criminal activity, or they are convicted by the court has sentenced some kind of punishment for them, jail punishment or rigorous imprisonment maybe. So in that case, should we allow such persons to contest elections in future, or should we put a lifetime ban on such persons? This is being discussed in this particular article. The second article is related to the recent controversy related to Ranveer, Allahabadia and Samay Raina. Now, here in this article, we are going to discuss what is obscenity and the laws in India. What do they say about obscenity, to be specific? The third article, it's related to this industrial production. And here we are going to say that somewhere we are observing some decline in the industrial production in India. So we'll understand that part. The fourth article is related to gender budgeting, the recent budget. In that budget, what is there for the gender specific things, or what we can say is, if we have to look for whether our budget is an inclusive budget or not, whether there are schemes or funding given specifically for women. So that we are going to discuss here. We've also taken the fifth article related to nuclear energy. Now this article is specifically talking about the nuclear liability laws. Now recently Government of India has said that they are planning to amend the nuclear liability laws so that the investment from France, America can come to India and we can go ahead with our nuclear cooperation. But we have already discussed this nuclear liability law in detail in our earlier daily news analysis session. So that's why in this video we'll just discuss all these four articles. Okay. Now, the first article of the day, whether we should convict persons, whether we should allow persons to contest elections if they are already convicted by the court. Now, this topic is important for you for prelims as well as mains, specifically for mains, I'll say, and this is important for GS paper 2. In this GS paper 2, you will find the syllabus line which mentions about Representation of People's Act. So, when you read this act, you'll get an idea about the lawmakers, what are provisions with respect to the disqualification of the lawmakers. So, this topic is directly mentioned in the syllabus and this part directly deals with it. Okay. Now, you can read this previous year question asked in the year 2013 in the ethics paper. It is often said that politics and ethics do not go together. What is your opinion in this regard? Justify your answer with illustrations. So, very interestingly, you're saying whether ethics and politics can go together or not. Or when you're saying that some people are convicted of a crime, that means they are criminals. And criminals are getting into politics. That's the main theme which we are going to discuss today. Okay, so somewhat a related theme where you get the questions even in the ethics paper as well as in the GS paper too. Okay, now what is the issue? Well, the issue is criminalization of politics. This is the core issue, and this is happening continuously. The trend shows that it is just increasing. The first question, what is criminalization of politics? Whenever a criminal gets into politics, he becomes politician and he gets into an office. Let's say he becomes member of parliament, member of legislative assembly, or even a minister. We call this phenomena as criminalization of politics. And this is happening in India. I'll show you that thing with data. So you can see the trend over here. So there is a report by Association for Democratic Reforms. Now their report is considered to be relatively very much authentic. So this report says, now this report is from 2024. So 2024 general elections data they have shown over here. And they have shown the criminal background involved in these member of parliament. So for example, 46% of member of parliaments have criminal cases against them. How much is 46%? Total 251 member of parliaments. Then 31% of these member of parliaments, they are facing serious criminal charges which includes rape, murder, kidnapping, attempt to murder and corruption. Now these are serious things. And here we are saying that such people are part of your legislature. Now, interestingly, this report even highlights one more thing. It says that if a person is having the background of any criminal activity, of if someone is a criminal, then the chances of that person winning an election is way more higher than a person who has a very clean image or a person who is non-corrupt, he's not criminal, he's a good guy. Such person will not win. Rather, a person with criminal background will win the election. They have shown this with data that 15.4% of chance of winning for candidates with criminal backgrounds and only 4.4% chance for candidates with clean record. So this is a very interesting data which you can even quote in the examination in your body part while answering the criminalization of politics part. Okay. Now you may ask, now this is one reason. This is one reason that the person has winnability factor because of which such people are getting into politics. But there are many other factors why this criminalization is taking place. The first thing is muscle and money power. You see, elections is a highly expensive stuff. A normal citizen might not be in a position to board an election because you will have to spend substantial amount of money, whether it is the election at the local level or the state level or at the national level. So the role of money comes into picture. Now if you look at people from criminal background, those who are criminals, you will find they will have some nexus or connections with the people who are having money. So criminals, they know how to get money through crime. So they will be running some kinds of organized network, some kind of organized crime will be conducted. If someone is doing kidnapping, certainly they are getting substantial amount of money. So overall, money power is involved. Second is muscle power, which will be involved. Muscle power, which you can say that some people will behave as Bahubali, or some people will behave as one having immense influence in their area. People will be afraid of such person. This is what we call as muscle power. So, because of the role of money and muscle power in the elections of India, the criminals find it as a good place or a good platform to come into picture. Then second reason is weak judicial system in India. Now, we although say that we have a very strong judiciary, but the judiciary has some loopholes in it. Many a times there are many cases which are just pending and the conviction rate is relatively very low. Secondly, there is a very high delay in the process of justice, because of which many criminals, they get away from all these things. So they have no fear about judiciary, and this weak judicial system, this is motivating criminals to move ahead with their criminal activities as well as get into politics. Third, the election machinery loopholes. See, whenever elections are getting conducted, we say that it's a democracy, people are choosing the leader, but people are not completely aware of whom they are choosing. They are not aware of the criminal background of a candidate. And because they are not much aware of it, they even go ahead and choose that person as a leader. So there are many drawbacks over here. And the last is politico-criminal nexus. Whenever you see a politician and you see a criminal, you will find that there is a nexus. There is some connection. Politician needs criminal, criminal needs politician. Because when a politician has to get into some activities, let's say for election purpose, they need some money power, they need some muscle power to be used against their opponents, they would require such criminals. And criminals require political support because these criminals will be taken to the police station or judiciary. So in that case, they would require some political patronage. So we will find some connection, some linkage between politics or politicians and criminals. And with time, criminals understood that instead of supporting a politician, let's become a politician, right? Now, the trend we have already discussed. Now, let's see the legal provisions regarding disqualification of convicted candidates. Now, it happens that there is a person against whom there is a very serious charge. So he went to the court and court has convicted him for, let's say, 1 year of jail or 2 year of jail. So what will happen with such person? If that person is a politician, he's an MLA or MP, what happens to that person? Will he be disqualified or not? So if you look at Representation of the People's Act 1951, it clearly says that such a person will be disqualified if he is convicted of a criminal offense and he will be sentenced to 2+ years of imprisonment. So if there is a person who got imprisonment by court for 2 years or more than that, then such person is going to be disqualified, and the disqualification will continue for 6 years even after the release of that person. So once he will be released, after that 6 years, he will not be in a position to contest for the election because he is already disqualified. Now this is one section, that is section 8 clause 3. We have another section, section 8 clause 1. It says, for the heinous crimes, for example, rape and murder, for any unlawful association, in case of corruption, untouchability related offenses, all for all these things, if a person is convicted, in that case also he or she will be disqualified. And interestingly, here they have not talked about for how many years that person has got jail. Here we mentioned 2 or 2+ years of imprisonment. Here there is no such mention. So disqualification is going to happen even in this case. Then we have section 11 of the Representation of the People's Act 1951. Now this is some kind of exception or some kind of loophole, you can say, or an additional power given to the Election Commission of India. Now first we said person will be disqualified for substantial period, let's say 6 years. Now here Election Commission has got a power that ECI can either reduce this disqualification period or they can completely remove this disqualification of a member of parliament or MLA. And this has happened earlier. For example, in 2019, Election Commission reduced the disqualification period of Prem Singh Tamang. He's a famous politician from Sikkim. So that was done. So earlier it was 6 years of time period of disqualification, and it was reduced to only 13 months. So just a month more than a year. So there is some power given to Election Commission. Now we have some Supreme Court judgments which we must be aware of. For example, we have this ADR case of 2002. In this case, Supreme Court said that there will be mandatory disclosure of criminal records of candidates. So before this case, it was not mandatory. But after this, whenever you're boarding an election, you will have to tell about all the criminal cases that are already there running against you. You have to mention that. So this is done for the voter awareness and transparency in election. Second case is Jan Chaukidar case of 2013. Now earlier in Patna High Court, there was a case running, and after that it went to the Supreme Court, wherein court upheld the decision made by Patna High Court. What Patna High Court said, we have section 62 clause 5 of Representation of People's Act. Now under this, the court interpreted that if there is a person who is in under trial, that means he is not yet convicted, the trial is going on in the court of law, but right now he is in jail because the trial is going on. So here if a person is under trial, then that person loses right to vote, right? That person loses right to vote. So here Patna High Court interpreted that if he loses right to vote, then he should not even have the right to get elected also. But interestingly, in 2013, Parliament came up with a law and they overturned this decision. And they said under trials are going to contest elections. So right now they can contest elections if they are under trials because the crime is not yet proven. Then in the same year, we see Lily Thomas case. In this case, the section 8 clause 4 of Representation of People's Act, that was struck down by the Supreme Court. Now what was this particular section, or what happened after sticking down? Also, let's say a sitting MLA or a sitting MP continue in office even after conviction if they filed an appeal. So after this judgment, convicted lawmakers are immediately disqualified. Simply what used to happen, if someone is convicted, let's say High Court convicted a particular MLA or MP, so we expect that that person should be disqualified, but that person used to go to Supreme Court, appeal there. So here what was happening, because the person is appealing in Supreme Court, in that time period the person could get rid of that disqualification. So here in the Lily Thomas case, Supreme Court said as soon as any such judgment comes, you will be disqualified immediately. Okay. Now, right now the discussion that is going on in the public sphere or in the newspapers, what we see is whether we should put a lifetime ban on convicted politicians. So instead of putting that 6 years ban after release, we should put a lifetime ban because they have done something wrong. They don't deserve to stay in power. Why it is being said? Because let's compare politicians with bureaucrats or any government employee. If a government employee is found in any criminal activity, what happens? That person simply loses his job and it's a permanent loss. It's not like that person can come up again. So if these public representatives, the government employees, if you have made such clauses for these people, then similar clauses should be made for politicians. Why should we have separate mechanisms for these two? Because both of them are public representatives and both are responsible people. We expect them to be responsible. So we should have higher ethical standard for politicians just as we have for bureaucracy. Okay. And second dimension would be that what about Article 14? Article 14 of the Constitution of India, right to equality. So you should have equality in terms of application of these kinds of laws. Then why there should be a lifetime ban? Because of this data which shows increasing trend of criminalization of politics. And this is interesting. If you go back to 1947, 1950, the first Parliament of India, the first representatives as such, at that time we did not see such a heavy criminalization, but right now we are observing this. So this trend is not so good. We've already discussed this, right? But there are some people who are arguing against this lifetime ban. What they say is there is a possibility of false criminal cases because many a times opponents or opposition party members may come up with a false case, and if you disqualify someone, that would not be a good thing. Then the nature of conviction also matters. So there is something called coming up with justice which is proportionate. So if someone has done a very smaller crime, for that if you are putting a lifetime ban for contesting elections, that would not be a proportionate action as such. So instead, what we should do is we should have a proportionate action. If the crime is really heinous, in that case, let's say it's a rape or a murder, such a heavy crime, or a corruption, in that case you put that ban of lifetime, but not in other cases. Then judicial appeal, because many a times we see that if someone is given conviction, later on it will be overturned. That happens. So we have to see that this qualification should only apply when the final conviction is done. High court convicted, after that Supreme Court is not convicting. So there should be some clarity, there should be some consistency. So once a final decision comes, then only this disqualification should be applied. This is the argument. And if we look at some global comparisons, for example, you compare with USA, UK, or even European Union, you will see different mechanisms established in different countries. So every country is coming up with its own mechanism. So going ahead with lifetime ban is considered as not a good idea as such by many people. Now, as a way forward, if we have to talk about it, what will we say? We'll say we can implement it in a gradual manner. Instead of absolute ban, let's go for some restrictions in a gradual manner. So first of all, we should apply a lifetime ban on people who are involved in heinous crimes. We should do this. And for other convictions, for anyone getting into any other criminal activity, there we should increase the time period for disqualification. We can make it 10 years or even 15 years. Okay. Then second thing, this disqualification can be done at the stage of framing charges. So when the charges are framed, that these are very serious criminal charges. Let's say the charges say that the person is going to get punishment beyond 5 years. Such charges are there. In that case, we can do that. And see, there will be role of judiciary anyway. So judiciary can play a role in case there are false charges against a person. So judicial review should prevent any kind of misuse of this mechanism. Then reviewing election commission's disqualification power, because we said there is a loophole that election commission can reduce that disqualification period or even remove it altogether. Now we should not have such arbitrary power given to election commission. So we have to review this power first, which is under the section 11 of Representation of People's Act, and we need a more structured process where there is 100% clarity on when or in which condition we can reduce someone's disqualification. Okay. Apart from that, we can focus on the transparency measures. So already we have made this mandatory provision that you have to showcase your criminal records while getting in any kind of elections. So such things should be enforced in a very strict manner. Then public awareness campaigns, whenever we are going ahead with, or even election commission is going ahead with, those campaigns should highlight the criminal background of a person, of a candidate. Then at last, the accountability of political parties also comes into picture. They have also some responsibility. So whenever a party is giving ticket to a candidate who is having criminal records, that party should face some accountability mechanism. They have to give some answers. So in that case, they should justify why they have given that ticket. And even we can come up with some legal mechanisms or deterrents which are very stronger for such parties. Okay, so all this can be done to curb criminalization of politics, which is increasing. And please understand, this criminalization of politics is one of the most dangerous phenomena that is taking place in India. It can destroy the entire structure of democracy. People will not have any trust in the institutions of democracy. So, this is the main thing which we need to deal with. Okay? Now, before moving ahead with this second article, let me check if we have any doubts in the comment box. Okay, no doubts. So let's move ahead with the next article. Now, this article is related to Ranveer Allahabadia and Samarana controversy. Now, this article we need to study especially this obscenity part and what is the legal framework or laws in India regarding this obscenity. Now, this article is important for prelims as well as mains. More important for prelims, I would say. Now, you can read this previous year question. I'll give you few seconds, let's say 10 seconds. Please read this question. Okay, done. So this question is specifically talking about a right, and they're asking to which article of the constitution this right belongs to, or this right is protected under which article of the constitution. Now it's a very easy question to answer. So if you look at these fundamental rights, these are very important, especially if I talk about article 19, article 21. These are highly important, you should focus a lot. And when we'll study these obscenity laws, this article 19 becomes highly important in this. Now let's start with the news. What has recently happened? So there is a show run by Samay Raina. He's a comedian, and in that show, a YouTuber, Ranveer Allahabadia, he went to that show as a judge, as a panelist, and he made some comments which are unacceptable to society, because of which cases have got registered against both of them. So right now, Assam police, after they got many complaints from people, they have registered a case under section 296 of Bharatiya Nyay Sanhita 2023. And because this incident took place in Mumbai, Mumbai police have initiated an investigation in this particular matter. Now this issue will go on for a long time, that investigation will take place, will come up with many things. But The broader issue behind this incident is about the obscenity laws that exist in India, because whatever that person has said, why it is not acceptable to people or most of the people, is whatever they said seems to be vulgar or obscene. And here we are going to discuss the legal aspect of it. Now, first of all, what do we mean by obscenity? So, if I have to define it, obscenity means any content which is spoken, written, visual, or performed which is offensive, indecent, contrary to accepted moral standards, particularly in matters related to sex, nudity, and lewd conduct. So, whether you have spoken it, whether you have written an article or whatever, or it's a movie which you have made, whatever it is, all that will be considered obscenity. Now, this is a general definition. But if we take the definition from our laws, so we have Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita 2023, it clearly defines what is obscene material. It says anything lascivious. Now, what is lascivious? Feeling or revealing an overt sexual interest or desire, or appealing to prurient interest, which is marked by arousing or appealing to sexual desire. So, if something is excessively sexual, that will be considered as an obscene material under Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. And they have even mentioned that it also includes content that may deprave or corrupt the minds of viewers. Now, here they are specifically looking at viewers as the youngsters or the sensitive adults or the people who can easily be influenced, who get influenced very easily. If such people will be depraved or their mind will get corrupt, then your content or your material will be considered as obscene. Now, if we look at the constitutional provisions regarding all of this, so we look at Article 19, Clause 1, Clause A, which says in India we will have freedom of speech and expression for every citizen of the country. So we have freedom of speech and expression, so we can say whatever we want to. But under the Clause 2, it is mentioned that state can impose reasonable restrictions on the speech in the interest of public order, decency and morality, defamation, security of state, friendly relations with foreign states. So it's not like you can say whatever you want to. If it goes against all of these things, then the government can take away your freedom of speech and expression. So this is mentioned because this is a reasonable restriction, because when you are doing something which goes against the morality or public order, or the security of the state is getting compromised because of that, then state will curb your speech and expression. Now this is mentioned in the constitution itself. So in case government is making any law which says that any obscenity will be a crime, if they are saying that, then they will have to justify that act under this particular constitutional article. Clear? Now let's see what kind of acts do we have already. So first of all, we'll look at this Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. So if we look at the section 294, we already saw that there is a definition given. Now the section 294, it talks about the publications and displays which are considered obscene. So this act clearly says if you are doing any kind of publication and all, you are a criminal. So any sale, import, export, advertisement, profit making from obscene material, that's a crime. It includes books, paintings, figures, electronic content and other materials. And now the recent case which involves Samay Raina and Ranveer Allahabadia. Here the material or content is electronic in nature. It is on YouTube. So it is an electronic content. So we can say this section can certainly be applied over here. Then section 296, obscene acts in public. Now this act says that if you are doing anything which is obscene in the public place, which is called giving some annoyance to other members of the public, then that is also crime. So singing, reciting or uttering obscene words in or near public places, this is a crime. And here there is a punishment, 3 months of imprisonment, 1,000 rupees fine, etc. has been given. Now, this is the major act we are saying. Apart from Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, we also have other laws. For example, Information Technology Act of 2000. If you read the section 67, it criminalizes publishing or transmission of obscene material online. 67A, it covers sexually explicit material, including images, videos, etc. And section 67B, it strictly prohibits the sexual content which involves minors. So these sections can also be applied. Then Indecent Representation of Women Prohibition Act 1986. Now this specifically talks about women. So if there is any content you're making or anything you're publishing where you're portraying a woman in an indecent manner, so here this act can be used. And the last is Cinematograph Act of 1952. So you must have heard about Censor Board in India. The real name is Central Board of Film Certification. Now this board is given the responsibility of regulating films and visual content. So in case there is any obscene act or anything like that, this board can ask the filmmaker to cut that particular scene. So this will happen. They can even ban films if required, because if it is violating public morality, they can do that under Cinematograph Act. Okay. Now, what does judiciary think about obscenity in India? What is their interpretation? So we see different interpretations. If we compare the worldwide interpretation and then look at India. So earlier there was one interpretation which came from United Kingdom. So there's this Hickling test from United Kingdom. So there was a case, Regina versus Hickling. From there we got this Hickling test. Under this test we said that obscenity will be derived or decided if anything that could deprave or corrupt impressionable minds, even if it has artistic or literary merit. So if something, let's say even this comedy stuff, even if it is artistic in nature, it is really good, but in case it deprave or corrupt the impressionable minds. Impressionable means anyone who gets influenced very easily. So children, you can say, or young people, or people lacking critical thinking skills, they can easily get influenced or impacted. If this is happening and if their mind is getting corrupt or immoral, then this Hicklin test says it is obscenity. It is 100% obscenity. Now, if you look at the courts of India or Supreme Court, they applied the same test in this 1964 case, Ranjit Udeshi versus State of Maharashtra, wherein they had banned a book named Lady Chatterley's Lover because it had some sexual content in it. So they banned this particular book, saying it is obscene. So they used the same Hicklin test. But later on, we saw that in the world community, the phenomena has changed. People or the countries did not rely on the Hicklin test to check whether something is obscene or not. So if you look at USA, we saw a new test coming into picture that we call as community standards test. So this is in India, but we got it from USA. So there was a case United States in United States, Roth versus United States 1957. Now whatever they came up with, because they replaced that Hicklin test with a new test. And even in India, we applied the same test in the year 2014 in this Avik Sarkar versus State of West Bengal. Now, what does this particular test say, or how it exactly works? So, judges are not going to judge whether something is obscene or not by the standard of extreme people. See, in our society, there will be some people who are highly conservative, extremely conservative, and there will be some people who are highly extremely liberal, and there will be many people in between who are average people, who are not having any extreme view as such. So here, whenever judges are judging whether something is obscene or not, they'll not take into account what these extreme people think, or what these conservative or these liberals think, but rather what an average or common man thinks. So if the content offends the common man, the average people, in that case they will consider it as obscene. Then second thing, they will also take cultural and social changes into account. Sometimes it may happen that 50 years back, if you go, something was considered obscene, but now it is not considered obscene. So court will take this thing also into account. And third thing, context also matters. If you have a movie of 2 hours and if there is one particular scene, you're judging the entire movie, you're banning the entire movie just because there is one scene which you do not like or which you find obscene, then that is not the right judgment. So here they will look at the context, they will understand the context, and they will judge the entire movie and not just one clip. So this is what we call as community standards test. So in India, we are applying this test since 2014 by judiciary. Clear? So this is the judicial interpretation of obscenity laws in India. Okay. Now let's move ahead with the next article of the day. So third article related to industrial production. Now industrial output, industrial production, you should know about the trend that is going on and the core industries in India. It's more important for prelims than mains, I would say. You can look at this previous year question wherein index of 8 core industries is asked. Please read this question. You'll get the answer in this article anyway. Please read. Done? So 8 core industries we should know, and which one is having highest weight among these 4. This is the question. So you should know about the weightage very clearly. Okay. Now, what is the news? Now, this is the news. In December 2024, we are observing some decline in India's industrial output growth. So, we are observing drop of somewhere around 3.2% is the number we see. So, we are saying in the last 4 months, it is the lowest one or very low. So, here we are specifically talking about industrial output. So what is this industrial output? So whenever you look at our industries, whatever output or whatever production that is taking place, we are looking at that production. If that production is increasing, it's a good news, because when industries are expanding, they are producing more, that means they are selling more, so they are expanding, so they'll give employment to more people. But reverse is a wrong case, or a negative scenario. Now here, industrial output, it is measured by index of industrial production, which we call as IIP. And this IIP gives us an economic indication of what's happening with our industries, what is the health, what kind of health we have when it comes to industries. So whether industries are running good or bad, we'll understand that very good. Now, right now we are saying there is a decline in the industrial output growth. So this is showing that something is wrong that is going on over here. So we can say there is a slowdown in the key sectors, especially manufacturing, mining, or some other sectors, let's say electricity, steel production and all that. So all this shows there is some decline, and if there is a decline, that means it's a negative scenario for us. It will lead to unemployment. There will be decline in the employment, there will be decline in the income generation and overall economic growth of the country. This is what we understand. Now, let's specifically try to understand this index of industrial production, because there can be a question on this particular thing. Now, it is an index, a simple index, a kind of report that will be provided to you. Now, this index considers 2011-12 as the base year. So, what they will do, they will just calculate the industrial production and they'll compare it with what kind of production we had in 2011-12. So, they will give this value of 100. So, they'll assume that the production that took place in this year, that was 100. Now they will check this year's production and they'll compare. So let's say this year it is 116. So we can say that there is 16% growth as compared to this base year. So this will be shown by this index of industrial production. Okay, now who publishes this particular index? So it's a very important thing. So we have Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. Under this ministry, or as part of this ministry, we have Central Statistical Organization, and this Central Statistical Organization comes up with this IIP on a monthly basis. Every month they will provide the data related to industrial production. Okay, you should remember this fact. Now if you look at this index, three major sectors are segregated in it. One is manufacturing, other is mining and quarrying, third is electricity. And you can see the weightage also. Manufacturing 79% weightage, mining and quarrying 10%, 10.47, electricity 10.17%. Okay, and the items in this industrial production, they can even be categorized as per the importance in terms of their use also. Some are primary goods, very important, some are capital goods, some are intermediate goods. Such categorization can also be done. Now if we look at all the industries involved, or we can, when we look at industrial production, we say there are 8 industries which are highly important, which are core industries. These are electricity, steel industry, refinery products, crude oils, coal industry, cement industry, natural gas and fertilizers. And why we are calling them core? Because they account for 40.27% of the share of total index of industrial production. So whenever you are calculating index of industrial production, 40% contribution comes from only these 8 industries. So their role is a major one. And you should know the weightage of each core industry, and this was the previous year question. So here the order is clearly mentioned: refinery product, electricity, then steel, then coal, then crude oil, then natural gas, then cement, and at last fertilizers. You should remember this factual part. Okay, now economic implications. As far as these economic implications are concerned, we have already discussed this part, that when we are observing there is decline in the growth output of industries, there will be economic slowdown, consumer confidence will go down because there is unemployment, we don't see industrial production taking place. How can you expect that? Then we need some government or policy response. So monetary policy will require to come up with some expansion, and future projections which we have, that we'll have this much of growth, that will also change because of this. Clear? Now the fourth article of the day, which is related to budgeting, specifically gender budgeting, and it's important specifically for your prelims as well as mains. You can read this mains 2016 question. I'll give you 10 seconds, please read. So if you read it, the question is specifically talking about gender budgeting. So if you should have a brief idea about what is gender budgeting and what is government doing in the budget, what kind of allocations are made, you should have a brief idea about it. Now see, if you look at the budget of 2015, 2025, 2026, and if you look at gender specific things in it, then we call it gender budgeting. So simply, it's not like any new budget we are making. We are just trying to understand whatever allocation of funds has been made for the budget, how much or what exactly is the provision or allocation made with respect to gender, or with respect to women empowerment, or something that is done by government for the sake of women. If we just come up with a document or just try to understand what all is done, what all allocation is done, we call it as gender budgeting. So it involves the allocation of resources and integration of gender considerations into government policies and programs. The aim is to reduce gender disparities, empower women, and promote gender equality. Now, why do we need any such gender component in the budget? Because we need more women empowerment. We see that women are not that empowered. One of the example that we can take, is from the female labor force participation rate. You compare it with the male labor force participation rate. So if you see, we have 79% of male participation in the labor force, in the economic activities. But as far as women are concerned, we have only 42% women taking part in the economic activities. Can't we make it equal? If we make it equal, our GDP will grow substantially in exponential terms. So the plan is by 2047, we will do that. By 2047, at least 70% women labor force participation will be there in India is what government is planning. But if you are planning to do this, certainly you will have to come up with budget allocation for women empowerment. So is it done? This is what we are checking with this gender component. So if we have a gender component, we can specifically see whether it is happening or not. So here it is happening and we can see that. For example, this gender budgeting allocation has increased from 6.8% in last year to 8.8% this year. And you can see the number of schemes which are mentioned over here, which show this gender budgeting. So in the skills part, Skill India program, Entrepreneurship Skill Development Program, National Skill Training Institute, everywhere women are considered. Then schemes for women employment, Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, MG Narega, PM Employment Generation Program. Then the new schemes, Prime Minister Dhan Dhanya Krishi Yojana, Sustainable Livelihood for Urban Workers Initiative, Centers of Excellence for Make in India, formalizing gig workers. Now government is planning to formalize gig workers for which allocation is made. And obviously when you're saying gig workers, it's not only males who are working here. There are females too. Then artificial intelligence, then women entrepreneurs are getting some benefit or some incentive from government side. And in the agriculture part, for example, government is providing this credit line for farmers, so their role of women comes into picture, or women farmers comes into picture. So you can read all these schemes in detail. I'm just giving you a brief idea about gender budgeting, and yes, there is allocation for women. Okay, so this is all about this article, and the last article of the day is related to nuclear energy, nuclear liabilities law, and this article we have already discussed comprehensively on 10th February 2025. Here is this topic, nuclear liability law. So if you want to watch, you can just go through the comment box, there you will find a link and you can watch this particular DNA nuclear liability law. Okay, now the time for practice questions. Mains practice question, discuss the issue of criminalization of politics in India. First they are saying discuss this issue, highlighting the legal provisions on disqualification and debate over lifetime ban on convicted politicians. So starting with the issue of criminalization of politics, to simply define what is criminalization of politics, you can even show the data given by ADR through representation of a kind of micro diagram. Then mention legal provisions. This RPA Act 1951, what Supreme Court has said, Lily Thomas case and all, you can mention. Then arguments in support, arguments against, all that you can mention. And at last, you can mention some way forward, some recommendations can be given. And a final conclusion, where you can say that criminalization of politics weakens democracy and public trust. So we need some electoral reforms, you can say. Okay. Some prelims practice questions for the yesterday's daily news analysis. I'll give you some the answers for these. So this one is on forest fire. NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, has declared forest fires as a disaster. Is it true? Yes. This National Action Plan on Forest Fires primarily focuses on increasing forest cover rather than fire prevention methods. Absolutely wrong. So one is the answer. President rule. This can be imposed when the state government fails to comply with directions of central government as per 365 article. True. Once imposed, this can last for maximum 2 years without any need for parliamentary approval. This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. See, there is extension of 6 months. So this is wrong. And president can revoke president rule at any time without requiring approval of parliament. That's true. President can. It's a president rule. They can remove it. They don't need to ask Parliament. So 1 and 3, A is the right answer. Then distributed denial of service, DDoS attack. This involves multiple compromised machines overwhelming a target system with excessive traffic. True. Ames Delhi cyber attack was a case of DDoS attack that disrupted healthcare services. True. These attacks are primarily used to steal sensitive data from target systems. No, they're not. They're not getting any information, sensitive data as such. They're just stopping your system. They're just disrupting your system. So DDoS attack is to disrupt. So 1 and 2 is the right answer. Now, as part of your homework, you have these questions. We'll discuss the answers for these questions, which are for today's articles, tomorrow. But you can attempt these questions. Simply go to the comment box, you'll find the link through which you will reach to the website wherein you'll find the question. Just attempt these questions. If you want answers immediately, attempt them. If no, we'll anyway discuss the answers tomorrow. So the first question related to gender budgeting. You can pause the screen and just read it. Second question related to index of industrial production. Again, pause the screen and attempt. And last, related to constitutional provisions governing obscenity in India. Okay, so this is all about this daily news analysis for today. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you so much.